On September 10th, 2001, the United States Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, walked up to a podium at the Pentagon and delivered a statement that would echo across decades. A number so large, so unbelievable, that it instantly became fuel for documentaries, conspiracy forums, and late-night conversations for years to come. That number was $2.3 trillion. According to Rumsfeld, the Pentagon's accounting systems were so outdated, so tangled, so chaotic, that they couldn't properly track $2.3 trillion in transactions. Not missing. Not stolen, but untraceable. At least, that's what he said. The next day, the world was changed forever, and for many people, that timing was too much of a coincidence to ignore. Today, we're diving deep into what some have called one of the biggest financial mysteries in modern history. What did people think happened to that money? What theories did it inspire? What rabbit holes did people fall into? And most importantly, what actually happened? This is the story of the $2.3 trillion question. Picture this. It's September 10th, 2001. The Pentagon press room is full of reporters, cameras, and staffers. The news cycle is slow. People are focused on domestic politics, the economy, and a rising debate about defense spending. Then Rumsfeld gets up and says, essentially, our financial systems are so outdated, we can't fully track $2.3 trillion in transactions. People blink. Reporters exchange looks. Some even laugh nervously. $2.3 trillion. At the time, that was 8 times the size of the entire U.S. defense budget. And here's the thing, it wasn't new. The Pentagon had been struggling with decades-old financial systems for years. Over 600 different accounting programs were being used at the same time. Many couldn't even talk to each other. Some still depended on paper records or punch card-style data. But when Rumsfeld said it, all at once, in one number, it hit differently. If you were watching that day, it was shocking. But 24 hours later, the entire world's attention shifted, and the announcement nearly disappeared. In the years following 9/11, a strange effect started happening. People remembered that statement, some vaguely, some clearly, some misremembered it entirely, but they remembered the timing. Online forums began asking, why announce that on that day? Was it a distraction? Was the money stolen? Did someone attack the Pentagon to destroy the evidence? The theories kept growing. Then a major point was added. Part of the Pentagon that was hit on 9/11 was the section where financial management and audit staff worked. And suddenly, the story took on a life of its own. Let's explore the biggest theories that spread online. Not because they're true, but because they show how powerful timing and coincidence can be. The first theory was, the Pentagon lost the money, and 9/11 was used to cover it up. This is the most common theory. People looked at the speech and said, they admitted the money was gone. The next day, the building gets hit. That's too perfect. The logic is simple and dramatically satisfying, which is why the theory spread so quickly. But as we'll see near the end, the truth is far less dramatic and far more bureaucratic. The second theory claimed that the records were destroyed in the attack. Many people online argued that the Pentagon strike destroyed all the evidence of the missing transactions. Images of collapsed offices fed the idea that crucial files were gone forever. But was that true? We'll answer that later. The third theory, someone stole the money, spread like wildfire. People argued, accounting errors don't add up to trillions. Someone had to have taken it. The government covered it up. But this theory misunderstands what the $2.3 trillion number actually meant. It wasn't a pile of cash. It wasn't a bank account. It was years and years of poorly categorized transactions across old computer systems. Still, the idea that the money vanished added fuel to an already suspicious public mindset. The fourth theory suggested that the number proves corruption at the highest levels. Many pointed to historical corruption cases in government spending. They argued that $2.3 trillion missing was simply too big to be accidental. Others believed the number was intentionally exaggerated to justify a budget overhaul or a major expansion of defense spending. And again, the timing one day before the largest attack on U.S. soil made some people feel the theories had weight. It's easy to look back and say people were overreacting. But when you consider the emotional climate of the early 2000s, the rise of the internet, and the lack of clear explanations at the time, the theories make sense. The first reason, confusing government communication. The Pentagon's explanation was technical and vague. Most people didn't understand what untracked transactions meant, so they filled in the blanks themselves. The second reason, distrust in institutions. After several scandals in the 1,990 seconds, from accounting failures to corporate fraud, public trust was low. A big number like $2.3 trillion felt believable as corruption. The third reason, the timing. Announcing it on September 10th ensured it would be overshadowed by events the next day. To some, that felt intentional. The fourth reason, the internet's early conspiracy culture. People could finally share ideas instantly, without filters or editors. And a mystery like this, it spread fast. Before we get to the truth, we need to understand just how chaotic the Pentagon's financial systems were. Imagine an organization running on 1,970 COBOL computer systems, separate databases for every branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, no real-time tracking, missing digital connections, paper records that sometimes didn't match the digital ones, and thousands of employees trying to reconcile numbers across incompatible software. The Pentagon wasn't designed like a modern corporation. It was more like hundreds of mini-companies all trying to merge into one giant organization without the tools to do it right. The $2.3 trillion wasn't money that disappeared. It was the value of transactions that couldn't be easily traced back to their original source. Think of it like a messy attic. Everything is technically there, but nothing is labeled correctly. One of the strongest conspiracy talking points was that the plane hit the exact area where the financial audit staff worked. This much is true. The offices of the Defense, Finance and Accounting Service and resource management teams were in that wedge of the Pentagon. People said, that can't be coincidence. But here are details people rarely mention. Staff were spread across multiple locations, not just the area hit. Backups of financial data were stored off-site. The audit was being run across many departments simultaneously. Much of the data existed digitally on servers not located in the Pentagon. So while tragically many workers died, the idea that all financial evidence was destroyed is simply not true. A huge part of the conspiracy culture claims the audit stopped after the attack. But that's not accurate. Government audits and reviews continued for years. Reports were published publicly. The issue was so big that Congress demanded updates. The Pentagon actually increased efforts to overhaul its systems. The $2.3 trillion number wasn't buried. It became part of long-term reforms that lasted into the 2010 seconds and beyond. This part of the story is the least dramatic, but the most important. Now let's put everything together and explain clearly what the $2.3 trillion figure meant. First, the money wasn't missing. It wasn't stolen, it wasn't gone, it wasn't taken out of the economy. These were transactions, payments, transfers, logistics expenses, payroll movements that lacked proper documentation in legacy accounting systems. It's like saying, we spent money, but the paperwork is incomplete. Second, the Pentagon's systems were outdated. Most of the accounting issues dated back decades. The system simply couldn't track every movement of money across branches. Third, the audit was not destroyed. Financial data existed in multiple locations. The 9/11 attack caused tragic loss of life, but it did not erase the accounting records. Fourth, the timing was coincidence. Rumsfeld's speech wasn't sudden. It was part of a long-term effort to modernize Pentagon systems, a project already underway before September 2001. Fifth, the number was misunderstood. People assumed $2.3 trillion meant missing money. The real term was unsupported transactions, which is an accounting issue, not a theft issue. Even with all this information available, the $2.3 trillion story refuses to die. Why? Because it taps into something deeper. People don't trust systems they can't see. People don't trust enormous institutions with unclear communication. People are drawn to stories where everything lines up too perfectly. And the biggest reason, coincidence feels impossible when emotions are high. The announcement the day before the most traumatic national event of modern times made the story unforgettable even if the meaning got distorted. This story isn't really about money. It's about how information spreads, how rumors form, how conspiracy culture grows when communication breaks down, and how a single sentence, said on a single day, can spark decades of misinformation. The truth is far less dramatic than the theories, but far more important. The Pentagon didn't lose $2.3 trillion. It lost track of some of the documentation surrounding decades of transactions. Not good, not defensible, but not a secret heist. And not part of a coordinated cover-up. It was bureaucracy, not conspiracy. Disorganization, not disappearance. Old technology, not corruption. The $2.3 trillion story is a perfect example of how a confusing message, mixed with bad timing and a tragic event, can transform into one of the most persistent modern myths. But the truth matters, especially when dealing with numbers this big and events this heavy. So next time someone says, "Did the Pentagon really lose $2.3 trillion the day before 9/11?" you'll know the answer. Not quite, not exactly, and not at all in the way people think. Thanks for watching, and remember, the deeper you look into the archives, the closer you get to the truth.